So I want to relate a story to you from a inspection that I did this week. And the inspection was for water coming in through the basement wall. And this house had what's called an engineered floor in the basement. Not every part of the country and not every part of the world has what is called a floating or an engineered floor. Basically, without getting into a lot of detail, it's a raised floor above the dirt, but not a slab. In many parts of the country, Arizona, Texas, others, a slab building for the foundation is now the way to go, and that's being done a lot. But this is not that case. This raised floor was due to soil that experiences heave, and the builders don't want that, so they will build a raised floor in the basement. Well, water was coming through the wall of the basement, and the customer had the kitchen above this, and they had a plumber come out, and the plumber didn't see any leaking in the kitchen sink, which was above this area. But it was on the back wall. They had a amphitheater backyard, which means it's the back of the backyard is higher by quite a bit, maybe 10 feet from the foundation wall, which was 30 feet into the yard. So it acts like a funnel, if you will, for water. And so the grade was too low at the foundation wall. So I'm talking with the owner in their basement, and I see, we used a moisture meter and we checked the wall, and the floor was wet, the plywood of the floor was wet, and the wall was wet. Well, what do you think happened next? Put it in the comments. I'm going to tell you what happens next in just a minute. So the homeowner had a little fun here. The next step on this inspection, after determining that the wall was wet and the floor was wet, and using a moisture meter, we determined that, we're going to have to demo out the drywall of the basement. We looked in the crawl space underneath because there was a plank of plywood that could be removed, and we looked in there and we only saw a couple of puddles of water. We didn't see that there was a sump pump down there. So what do you think happened next? Well, we removed the drywall via a sledgehammer, which the owner did, so we could see the area that was wet behind the wall, because without observing, and this is true about any inspection, without observing, you can't tell what's going on. We don't have ground penetrating radar. We don't have a camera that will slip in via a little tiny hole like you see in spy movies. We don't have any of that, and that wouldn't have given us a good picture of what was going on anyway. So the owner and his 12-year-old son and his wife started beating on the wall to open it up. So now we've opened up the wall in between a couple of studs, and what do you think we see? Well, the outer concrete foundation wall was wet, damp, clammy, so to speak. So I knew, and I didn't reveal to them, but I knew that there was moisture coming in from the outside somewhere. We've eliminated a plumbing leak. We've eliminated water coming from underneath. So that leaves us with water coming in from the wall itself. Well, if this has happened to you, go ahead and click that like button again, or subscribe. But what happened next was we demoed more drywall. There was no way to tell. We didn't have a drip coming in to tell. They had had several recent very heavy storms. And so more demo of drywall. And it was demoed across the bottom to see how wide the area was. And then we demoed to the top of the drywall. And then what do you think it revealed? Well, if you want this whole story, you need to go to YouTube, because all these little posts and videos are short for people to just get a quick little glimpse. But if you want the whole story, you're going to have to go to YouTube and check Foundation Repair Academy, and the whole story will be there. Anyway, the next step on this story was to demo that upper portion of the drywall. And when we did that, it revealed a pretty healthy crack that had been repaired. Now, the wall had been drywalled, but it had also been insulated behind it with rigid foam insulation. So we couldn't see that either. So we had to tear that out as well to see what the wall was doing. So what the wall was doing was the lower portion of the foundation wall had broken away from the upper portion of the foundation wall at the sill plate, which is a version of a bowing wall. Now, you can see how that becomes a problem, because if the foundation is moving underneath the sill plate and it comes off the sill plate, meaning it bows in so much that the sill plate is running like this, the house is not sitting on the foundation. That's a terrible thing. Now, we would not have found this had we not demoed out the drywall. And the customer, we would have never found the water, because the water was leaking through the wall in a crack that had opened up, and they wouldn't have known it. Now, they've only owned the home for a short time, but anyway, that's a whole different discussion as to whether the previous owner knew about it or not. But they put in waterproof insulation, and they tried to seal up the crack on the inside, which never totally works. And so therefore, you have a foundation problem. So I'm going to tell you the conclusion of the story here coming up next. But if you like what we're talking about here, punch the like button or subscribe. Anyway, I'll get back to it in just a second. So the conclusion to the story basically is this. The backyard, which is this sloping backyard towards the house, had been collecting water for many years. The neighborhood was known for this issue, especially in their cul-de-sac, for some reason, the way the soil is. Anyway, it was creating hydrostatic pressure, which is water pressure in the soil, pushing on that bowing wall till it eventually cracked. They tried to repair it. They covered it up with drywall, but the wall has still got a problem. So I told the owners to demo out the drywall, because it's got to come out anyway. And then what do you think the repair for that would be? I'll tell you that next. So usually in these cases, the exterior foundation wall had waterproofing to begin with, that black tar membrane that people see, which is supposed to keep water out. Well, this house was 40 some years old. Over 40 years, that exterior waterproofing had deteriorated and basically just doesn't exist. So water is able to weep and leak through the wall, and that's what caused this to be wet. So what do you think the repair is for this? You can comment on it if you have some foundation experience, knowledge, it's happened to you, type of thing. Please comment on that. And so really, we're going to talk about that now. And that is the repair. There can be various different repairs for this issue. One is to put in steel beams and hold that wall back, and put it back in place. But the problem here is it's got water leaking through it. So you have to pull the wall back and make it straight to try to break that crack, which I showed you earlier, and get rid of that that fracture that's occurring at the top first. And then you have to re-waterproof the wall from the exterior. An interior drain in this situation won't do a darn thing, because it's not leaking from the cold joint. There is no cold joint, because it is it's a raised floor. So it would only try to collect water in the mud down below. It wouldn't keep the wall from leaking. It wouldn't do any of that. So the wall has to be straightened, and using probably earth anchors or some version of earth anchors, which is a plate that goes through the foundation, a plate that's placed on the interior of the foundation in underneath the drywall out into the yard about 14 feet, and another plate put on the outside. So I don't know if you know what a sea anchor is, but it's a similar idea, which means that the earth is anchoring that bowing wall. The wall has to be re-waterproofed with a tar membrane or a material membrane on the outside. And then because you're disturbing the existing footer drain that was there, which probably isn't working anyway, you have to put a new footer drain in. And because that's 10 feet underground, you have to put a sump pump in to collect that water and discharge it out. That takes the hydrostatic pressure off the wall. So there you go. That was a very long story and didn't mean to be, but the story is good, meaning there's a lot of pieces of information in this, and you can get a lot of this in Foundation Repair Academy too. But I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope it's not happening to you, but if it is happening to you, now you know probably the best approach to repair it. And now if you have a foundation repair contractor coming to look at it or a structural engineer coming to look at it, you can have this story in your back pocket and you'll know questions to ask them. Thanks for watching.